emotional and history-making family reunions in Israel. All 20 living Israeli hostages returned to their country after being held by Hamas for more than 2 years. Members of Congress from North Texas are reacting to what's happened since the first phase of the peace plan was signed. We spoke with Republican Craig Goldman of Fort Worth, who credits President Trump with a big win that he hopes will turn into a lasting peace.
Historic is a great word to use. It was extremely historic. So emotional watching it. I watched it all day. I started watching at 2 a.m. I didn't stop all day. Watching the families embrace their loved ones. I'm sure in the back of mind thinking that possibly they'd never see him again. And here they were after 2 years in captivity of being a hostage, seeing their loved ones again. It was truly emotional and absolutely fantastic to watch.
And what was the key to achieving this in your mind?
Well, in my mind, I think the key was one person, Donald Trump and his team, his negotiating team. When the many times that Bibi Netanyahu came to either America or Trump talked to him on the phone, it was, let's end this war and let's bring the hostages home. It was their negotiations that made this happen. There's no question in my mind.
And the key now, though, is it has to be a lasting peace.
No question.
So how do you achieve that?
Well, that's step one was to get the hostages home and end the war, right? So that's step one. Now step two comes in negotiations of what happens next, which was, if you watched yesterday, part of the historical another historical moment is when President Trump went to Egypt and met with all those foreign leaders of the region, of the Middle East, that's going to affect their lives as well and their countries as well. So they have to have input of what happens next there as well.
And one thing, though, is that there are still 24 remains of 24 hostages who didn't survive, who were killed by Hamas, have not been returned yet. How does the United States ensure that Hamas lives up to that part of the agreement and returns the remains?
Well, again, that was part of the deal, and just heartbreaking to know that there are up to 30 former hostages who are no longer living that are still in Gaza. And part of the problem, as they said, is they need to find them first. They don't really know where they all are. So right, we keep the pedal on the metal and make sure that all those hostages or the remains are returned back to Israel.
So let's talk about the government shutdown. Is there any end in sight, and what do you think it's going to take to end it?
The end in sight is Chuck Schumer saying, okay, I'll vote for the continuing resolution. That's it. It's very simple. The Republicans in the U.S. Congress, in the House, made that vote. What's it going on, 2 weeks and change now, where we took that vote to keep the government open, and the Democrats in the Senate refused to do it. They need 60 votes in the Senate. They have 53. So we need Chuck Schumer to end the Schumer shutdown, take the vote to keep the government open, or now reopen the government, and get the troops paid, and have low-income families get paid, because there's no reason to have this shutdown right now, zero.
So, while the Republicans are blaming the Democrats are blaming the Republicans, saying, look, they control the White House, they control the House, they control the Senate.
And we've all voted to keep the government open. It's Chuck Schumer that has forbid his members and himself from voting to keep the government open.
We also spoke with Democratic Congresswoman Julie Johnson of Farmers Branch about the return of Israeli hostages and what comes next.
Oh, I'm just so happy. I'm so happy for those families. The anguish that they must have been going through over these last 2 years, I can't even comprehend it. If my son either one of my sons were missing from me for that long. So I'm just really happy for those families. Hopefully they can start the process of healing and moving forward. But I'm very happy for them.
What do you think was the key to achieve this? Obviously, this was a long time coming.
Well, I think there's several factors at play. A 2-year war takes a significant toll on everyone involved. Obviously, the Israeli military had done significant damage in Gaza and to Hamas. And I think the people of Gaza were suffering mightily. And so at some point it has to end. And I think there's also a lot of world pressure being put to bear on Netanyahu and the Israeli government. Trump certainly had a role in that, but other countries, Qatar and Egypt and others did as well.
Do you think that the pressure was also put on Hamas especially from these other countries in the Middle East, these other Arab countries in the Middle East?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was. I think there's pressure to bear on all sides. And obviously, that pressure finally moved the needle. I think there have been a lot of efforts to try to bring this war to an end over these last 2 years. And finally, we finally got to a point where it was achievable. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts going forward. How's Gaza going to govern itself? Who's going to take over the leadership of the Palestinian people and their government?
We've seen a lot of Republicans obviously praise President Trump, and even some Democrats, former First Lady and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton among them. So what do you say about that?
I think it's great. He obviously had a role in achieving this outcome, and we need to give credit where credit is due. I think that's one of the differences between Democrats and Republicans. I can give credit to a Republican when they do something well and they achieve a good result. Republicans are unable and have been unable to ever give credit to a Democrat when they've achieved good results.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the ongoing government shutdown. What do you think it's going to take at this point for the government to reopen?
It's going to take Republicans to recognize that Americans need their health care and they're not going to easily walk away from it. Millions of Americans are going to lose their health care coverage. Notice letters are starting to go out. 6 states have received notice letters. They went out in Georgia already. And as a result, you could already see Marjorie Taylor Greene is going, whoa, I didn't sign up for this. This is affecting my kid. This is affecting my constituents. And she's starting to voice her concerns about what's happening. Texas notice letters will go out November 1st. So I think what we're going to see is Texas is the largest state that participates in the Affordable Care Act. Every congressional member of the Texas delegation has constituents that benefit and get their health care coverage from this program. And I'm sure that their phones are going to start reading off the wall when people start getting their notice letters and realizing that their premiums could go from $7,000 to $23,000, up hundreds of percent, doubling and quadrupling for their healthcare coverage, and it's unacceptable in our state.
A new policy at the U.S. Defense Department is attracting a lot of controversy. News organizations say they are not going to go along with it. Sarah Jenkins explains what's at stake in the brief.
CBS News is one of many media organizations, including Newsmax, The New York Times, and Fox News, where Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was previously an on-air host, that say they will not sign the new Pentagon restrictions. The networks released a joint statement saying, quote, "Today we join virtually every other news organization in declining to agree to the Pentagon's new requirements, which would restrict journalists' abilities to keep the nation and the world informed of important national security issues. The policy is without precedent and threatens core journalistic protections. We will continue to cover the U.S. military as each of our organizations has done for many decades, upholding the principle of a free and independent press." Hegseth said that outlets who don't agree to the new rules, which restrict reporting on news not specifically approved by his team, will be evicted from the Pentagon. For The Brief, I'm Sarah Jenkins.